Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today, Financing Transformation, Catalyzing Change Through Value-Aligned Financing. We've got a power pack panel today. I was just saying earlier that I felt smarter just reading their bios, but we're going to come here today to talk about financing, how financing can help scale our collective impact. I remember attending a foundation conference several years ago, and everyone kept talking about to scale, and I'm looking around of somewhere to step to get my weight or something like that. I didn't really understand what that was, but I've come a long way. That said, is how can we scale our collective impact and combine financing and meaningful cooperative development moving forward to bring everyone together. This is a special interest to me because not only am I a proud cooperator, but I'm also president and chair of the National CDFI Coalition. So there are a lot of touch points here for me, which will make me very nerdy throughout this entire presentation. So what we're going to do is we're going to hope to make this really conversational and more of a discussion. No presentations, but we definitely want you to use the chat to ask any questions. Again, four amazing minds here in regards to financing and value-aligned finance strategies. So we're going to go first and have the presenters use about 5 to 7 minutes to talk a little bit about their work and what they're doing from a financing standpoint. And then at the very end, we'll do a little question and answer. So with that, Lauren, would you go first?
Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. I am Lauren Gratton. I am co-founder and chief community officer of Mission Driven Finance. And we're a private impact investment firm based in San Diego, California, dedicated to building a financial system that ensures good businesses have access to sufficient, affordable capital. You know, just that. But we're started with the idea of making it easy to invest in your community. So everything that we do, all of our funds and structured products are designed to close capital gaps that in turn will close opportunity gaps. We work with local and national partners to help them create the impact that they want and work with businesses and folks on the ground to help them get the capital that they need. We got started in 2016, so coming up on our 6th birthday now. Have an intentionally diverse team, but everything that we're doing is to, again, ensure that the small businesses and nonprofits get access to capital to create more inclusive economic opportunity. We think that that's one of the biggest drivers of a better world. And small businesses have plenty of capital gaps. The system has not evolved very equitably or accessibly for smaller entities to get access to capital. And it's even patchier when you've got shared ownership structures. We're fortunate today to have some of the great banking partners that do support shared ownership and don't take single ownership structures as gospel. But there's still much to do and a lot of creativity that could be unlocked to help accelerate more of these strategies. I'll just note that I am mixed race. It's important to me, but I was fortunate to grow up in one of my ancestral homelands of Hawaii. And there, the concept of private property only got introduced in 1840. So it's not like having this idea of that's mine, only mine, and having collateral in that kind of sense was something that was, taken for granted. Culturally, there's still quite a bit of this idea of having shared property, having shared ownership, shared kuleana or responsibility to take care of things. So that feeds into how we think about this work. We see shared ownership as one of these key pathways for us as an entire firm at Mission Driven Finance to create more inclusive economic opportunity. So I know some of my colleagues that we're working on projects with have already been speaking during this wonderful symposium. But for those that haven't tuned in, a couple of the folks that we're working with or projects that we're working on in the shared ownership space and financing include the Employee Ownership Catalyst Fund with project equity, financing conversions of existing small businesses to worker ownership, building off of the fantastic work that Project Equity did with Christina Jennings, who I see is in the room. Also, Obron Acquisitions Fund, you've heard from Joseph, but helping to create an acquisition vehicle to add to the cooperative conglomerate. And then a real estate investment strategy to support early childhood care and education. It's a very broken market, and we are looking for ways to get more capital into early care, but doing that from a real estate perspective and infusing many of the lessons that we've gotten from working in other shared ownership structures to help build power in place and localized governance control, more opportunity for early care providers who tend to be women of color to grow their own business ownership and home ownership as a really way for longevity of a community, but also for wealth building more inclusively. That's a lot. It's at a high level, but I will leave it there so we can hear from the other fantastic panelists, and happy to dig in as we keep moving.
And thank you so much, Lauren. The first thing I love Chief Community Officer. That sums it up to me. That's what we all want to do. And then I love inclusive economic opportunity there. I'm a proud Head Start child myself. So you're definitely hitting a nerve with me as it relates to early care and education. It's so overlooked in this country. So keep up the good fight in that regard. Thank you. So I will turn it over to you, Gopal.
Great, thank you. I just started a timer because I'm terribly bad at the internal time management issues. My name is Gopal Vayaneni. I'm representing the Seed Commons, which is a federation of local non-extractive revolving loan funds to support community and worker-owned cooperatives and to build economic wealth in communities and economic democracy. And I live in Huchin Village, which is, and I live along the Temescal Creek watershed in an intentional collective community. It's unceded Ohlone territories, also the birthplace of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, Oakland, California. So a rich history of organizing, activism, and cooperation. And I think I wanted to start with building on some things that you said, Lauren, about, so the Seed Commons is this federation of cooperatives. And I wanted to start with commons because you pointed out, private property only came to Hawaii very recently. And I want to start by reminding us that that what we do to create financing mechanisms that are based on sharing and cooperation are not the alternative. It is, in fact, the commons predates enclosure, and private property, private ownership, and the accumulation of capital as a wealth hoarding strategy is an infringement upon the commons. And what we are doing is what we have always done. And what is put on top of us is what's brand new, and it is a failed experiment that leads to massive inequality and obviously the erosion of the living world upon which we depend. And I think for us that's really important. And in fact, that's why we're called the Seed Commons, is because the way we think about it is very much like the metaphor of a seed library, which is this idea that when you go to a seed library, you borrow seeds, you do not take all the seeds, you plant the seeds in order to be sure that, and when what you return is not the seeds you borrowed, but the seeds you grew from what you planted. You always return more seeds than the seeds you borrowed. In order to ensure that the Seed Commons doesn't get depleted, when the seed librarians give you the knowledge and information of how seeds were grown before. And when you return seeds, you are obligated to share the knowledge of how you grew them, because the diversity of seed doesn't just come from seed. It comes from how much water they got, how much sunlight they got, how well you cared for them, whether you sang to the plants or not. That's what creates diversity in seed varieties, and that's what that diversity of knowledge and tending is also important to us being able to sustain the seed library. And of course, if you borrow seeds from a seed library, you are a member and are therefore responsible for governing the library itself. Just replace the word seed for capital, and you have the model that we operate on. We're a $30 million fund with 30 local loan funds. We do not believe that getting to scale just means getting bigger. We aggregate to scale. So we are autonomous funds that aggregate to get access to capital, but decentralize and democratize the distribution of that capital to communities. Our model is based on 3 key principles in this order: shared learning, shared services, and shared capital. So it's a commons of knowledge. We freely share everything we are learning about how to do what we're doing in cooperative development. It's shared services, meaning we co-invest in the kind of infrastructure we need that supports every local loan fund. And we have access to a shared pool of capital that we can use to support worker and community ownership. I'm not fond of quoting the Supreme Court of the United States, but Louis Brandeis, who was a justice of the Supreme Court back in the day, said once, we may have democracy in this country, or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we cannot have both. And the economic democracy for us is embedded in a larger set of political principles about what it means to build real political power aligned with social movements for deeper social transformation. And then before my timer goes off in 1 minute, the ins and outs or the technical aspects of how we do it are really about, the first rule is debt subordination. So you get loans from the seed commons. It is lending. You only pay back the loans by sharing your success. So it's profit sharing of success. There's not compounded extractive interest. The debt is always subordinate to the success of the enterprise. And so that's a really, really important principle, because we never leave a community worse off than if they had never taken the loan. So there's no collateral, no credit exclusion, and it's radically inclusive, meaning those who are most excluded are who we prioritize, which is why we're over 95% Black, Indigenous, people of color, women and queer-owned cooperatives. We are overwhelmingly 85% in communities of color. And if you include rural communities, which I consider to also be radically excluded, whoop, that's my timer, we're even more. And just to note, 100% of the co-ops we support navigated the pandemic really well. The last thing there was other things, but I'll get to them later. The last thing I'll say is, one thing that's really cool about the model, the way we have built it, is the success of the local loan funds depend on the success of the co-ops, because there's no way to recover the debt and keep the loan funds going unless the projects are successful. We are structurally symbiotic, and therefore the technical support, the capacity support that we provide is built into the process of lending. So I'm with Cooperation Richmond and with the Our Power Loan Fund by the Climate Justice Alliance. And, I helped install a floor at the bike shop that we gave a loan to, because that's what it takes to keep the shop successful. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the steering committee of a loan fund or a project officer or doing finance, you are 100% whatever it takes to support the co-ops and being successful. And I think that's a really important value and principle. And I'll shut up now. Thank you.
No need. Thanks, Gopal. No need to shut up. That takes a lot of discipline to time yourself. I need to make a note to do that the next time I get an opportunity to speak. But thank you for that. I would ask selfishly if you could put the quote from the justice in the chat. I'm a quote junkie as well. So Oscar, you're up next, my friend.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you, Kristen, and the rest of the staff of this event, for invite me. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and try to share what we are doing in Basque Country around just to create new businesses and to support cooperatives and these kind of things. I think Kristen is sharing the. Maybe Kristen, I don't know. Bueno, we can maybe. Bueno, if you start sharing. Well, the idea was to speak without the slides, but.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to share the slides for you.
Yeah.
Wait, you do want me to, or you don't want me to?
No, just avoid the slides. Yes, I will speak.
No slides. Okay.
No slides. Yeah.
All right, I'll take them away.
It's most challenging for me. Yeah, just to. Yeah, my English. Well, I'm working for La Boreal Cucha, which is a cooperative bank based in Mondragon in northern Spain, in Basque Country. I'm head of business banking there. I working for almost 30 years there. I don't know if you are familiar with Mondragon. Mondragon is maybe the biggest cooperative movement in Spain. 80,000 people working for Mondragon. And we are the bank or the group. 2,000 people working in the bank. We are based in Mondragon, and we cover northern Spain. Not all the Spain, but northern Spain. The history of the bank is quite funny because we were created in 1959 just to finance at that moment the new cooperatives. Was the moment of the creation of different cooperatives, the seat of Mondragon, right now it's Mondragon, and the priest who was inspiring the Mondragon movement, Mendiarreta, he had the very great idea that they need a bank. We say we need a bank just to finance this movement, and we started at that time financing the cooperatives. And right now we are a typical commercial bank. We have all the products that the banks have. We have current accounts, we have deposits, investment funds, of course loans, credits, credit cards, everything. Yeah, we compete face to face with big guys in Spain, Santander, BBVA, all these people. But the idea is we are a local bank. We compete with international bank, Spanish international bank. We are a local bank, but we have a slogan. We say that there is another way, because we are the co-ops. It's a worker co-op where the workers were members of the course. That means that the commitment and the involvement of the workers is huge in the bank, and we do things in different way, We are very active in supporting entrepreneurship, supporting the SMEs and the local economy, because as we are local, we say we have no business in Mexico, in Latin America, in the United States, in different countries, but so we have to do business in Basque region and around. And I would like to spend a little bit our initiative we call Gatzenpresa, because this initiative is started 25 years ago in the early 90s in a branches, because we have more or less 300 branches. At that time was a very, very deep moment here, a very heavy crisis, because the industry was changing and things like that. And the unemployment rate ratio at that time was more than 60. Young people were to our branches and say, okay, I need a loan just to start a business. And the branch manager say, yes, very good idea. But do you have a collateral? No. Do you have a business plan? No. Do you have money? No. Say, no loan for you, man. Then, but that people with that commitment say, we have to do something here. We have to do something just to support these people, these young people. And what's the seed of Gatzenpresa? And the idea of the Gatzenpresa is very simple. We gather at the same time the business development services with the financing. we try to provide all the services the entrepreneur needs just to create the new business and in order to be successful. For example, I give you an example because I like cooking. Imagine that I am a cook, good cook, and I want to start a restaurant. But of course, I am a good cook. Okay, your food is very good, but I have no idea how to manage a restaurant. I have no idea how to manage the financial statements and these kind of things. But Gatzenpresa provide all this training and coaching just to help these people. Just to how you have to know how to manage a restaurant. You have to know how to manage financial statements. You have to know how to manage with hiring people and these kind of things. No. At the same time, we provide the loan, we provide the money just to start the business. Well, I will say that this is quite successful. The initiative is an initiative just with the aim to create employment. For us, it's not important to be a cooperative or not. It's just the aim is just to create employment. Usually, we support around 400 projects per year, attending 2,000 people per year, and 2,000 people becoming 400 projects. The projects are quite small, two employees per project, but there are the usual projects that there are in any places just to create a new business. A lot of restaurants, bars, of course in Spain, there are a lot of bars and restaurants, maybe as you know, but there are local businesses, I don't know, shops and these kind of things. They focus on services, no? But at the same time, some industries. As a bank, the most important thing that the Gatzenpresa provides to the bank is the business plan. I would say that this is another key point. During this process, helping the people just with coaching and training. At the same time, we do the business plan of the business, no? And this business plan for the bank is I don't know, I would say that like the Bible, no? Is 100% reliable, no? And if Gatzenpresa says that one project is feasible, for the bank is feasible. So we go ahead with the law, no? And it's another key point. But apart from the beginning, we help in the consolidation process. No, we say consolidation process after start the business during the first years of the running of the business. No, for example, we have a lot of volunteer mentors, which we are volunteers. We help doing the mentoring, helping the people in that process. We provide a lot of courses, a lot of training. Even during the COVID pandemic, we provide, I don't know, how to create e-commerce, how to create a website, how to create, I don't know, how to sell using WhatsApp or Instagram or these kind of things, no? Yes, in order to, because it's so important to maintain the business at the same time. I don't know, I would say that this is quite successful because maybe 3 out of 4 continued on business after 5 years. So I think we are doing quite good job here. No? And I don't know, maybe, I don't know if I didn't use as well the watch, so maybe it's time for next.
You're fine, Oscar. You're fine. Yeah, you did have a question from Michael Peck, but I'll ask that at the very end. I'm going to have to lobby Michael Peck to take me over.
The musician, Michael. Yeah. It's a real anecdote about the mentoring process. Yeah, I'm one of the mentors, and as you say, we are volunteers. And the first project I was mentoring was a musician, a Brazilian guy who came from Brazil to Spain. He started studying music because in San Sebastian, where I live, there is a very, very famous music school, and he got a place there, but he came from Brazil, no network, nothing, and say, I have to do something. And then he's very, very active, and he created a business just to play in weddings and things like that, no, in events, no. Well, I started mentoring with this guy, and just how we help with these people was the anecdote is that I was during the second meeting with them. The name is Jairo. I said, Jairo, how do you quote one wedding? I say, have a look at the people or the couple. I say, more or less 500 euros. Really? Very good system. Well, maybe we can find out another one. Let's take the paper and the pen. I say, okay, 500 euros. How many musicians? 4. How much for musician? Blah blah. Do you eat something? Yes, we eat a sandwich. Okay, we make that's the list. And you say, Haru, you lose 50 euros in this way. No problem, no way, man. And then he created a one Excel sheet just to do that, and started. In the next month, it was, Oscar, we are very, very good because I started quoting 100 euros more, and the market is admitting that. No? It's the anecdote of the musician. No?
So Michael said
he
that,
got very famous because he participated in a reality show in the Bus TV a couple of months later. No?
Yeah, well, Michael said he knows you can cook, but he doesn't know about your singing, so we'll keep it.
Yeah. I have no brain for music. I have only brain. No.
Thanks, Oscar.
Yeah.
Bavi, we'll go to you next.
All right, John, I'll help you make up some time. My name is Babby Jacobs, and I'm calling in from the sacred land of the Lenape here in Brooklyn, New York. And it's always a pleasure to see you, Lauren. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at our Social Venture Circle American Sustainable Business Council conference in San Diego, where this will be a big topic, and a pleasure to be on this panel with all of you. My perspective is much different. I'm come from an individual investor membership organization called the American Sustainable Business Council and Social Venture Circle. And our role is just to highlight the great work that you all are doing and try to encourage others to fund this work. You're much too much of a well-kept secret. And I will just back up a little bit and say we're a national membership organization of about 500 people across the country, as I said redundantly. And we invest in impact startup businesses. And during the time of COVID, this amazing group of investors really rolled up our sleeves. We didn't duck our heads and cover at the time of March when people's portfolios were tanking. We got on the phone. We divided up the list of entrepreneurs. We called each and every one of them. We said, how can you help? How are you doing? Emotionally, physically, financially, how are your kids? How's your dog? Do you need a safe place to stay? I mean, that's the kind of investors we work with and who we are. That's the core of our community. But the biggest thing we noticed, and you'll appreciate this, John, was that the big banks were really letting our entrepreneurs down in the big sense of the word. So we started a whole initiative with one of the amazing, we're all volunteers. This is just our passion. But one of our members out of Philadelphia, Pam Porter, is a wonderful My Sister in Impact now. And we started working on CDFIs and Main Street lending as our launch pad here, and really put together a list of opportunities for individual investors, because it's great to inspire people. Your work it moves everyone to tears. If it doesn't, then why be alive? But the work that you're doing is so extraordinary. We thought, we don't want to just inspire people and tell them good stories. We want them to have a place to really move their money and feel a part of this movement. So we started the CDFIs, community banks, a Main Street lending program. So we have a list of about 80 CDFIs that are investable by individuals. And then our next form was transforming ownership for social justice. And thanks to two other volunteer members, Eric Leanson out of California and David O'Leary out of the Northeast, we put together many programs. Your organizations have participated in a big way and highlighting this work. And again, Kristen said she'd pop the website in the chat to really show people how they can invest in this work. We've highlighted some of the, 18 or so organizations across the country, from Deputy Mayor Phil Thompson here in New York, who are doing really good work, and the work in Wisconsin where they're going door to door and talking to entrepreneurs and saying, what's your succession plan? I'm 63 years old. I'm done. I've got 40 employees I adore, but I can't sell this business. So we're trying to help highlight your work and make sure that people know this is an opportunity to get funded, and to work also through the American Sustainable Business Council on policy work, because with all your work and all our money, it's still not going to happen if we don't have the sustainable policies behind it. We've done some work with the Reform the Small Business Administration. As you know, individuals are the ones having to sign off on these loan guarantees. That doesn't fit the model, much better than I. So I don't pretend to be an expert. I just am a huge fan of your work and hope to highlight it in any way I can. So Kristen will share the website we created with, we have a survey in there. If there's funds that you know of that should be on there, please send them our way. This is meant to grow organically and to get out into the world. So we'll start with Social Venture Circle, and then the sky's the limit. So thank you all for your work.
And thank you, Babby. We're in my CDFI coalition hat, representing CDFIs. Thank you for their work. I often say CDFIs were an idea, then it became a movement, and now it's an industry. But we got to continue to do so. We need the Babby Jacobs of the world and everyone else helping us along. So, Power Pack panel, as I said, I want to see, first and foremost, before I ask my questions, if anyone has any questions to put in the chat. I know we've got some CDFIs here. We've got a lot of different folks here. So I'm going to start with my first question. So, a good friend of mine works at the Kellogg Foundation. I probably said this line 20 times since she said it, but she made the top 50 under 50 of the chief investment officers in CIO magazine. And so she's kind of going through and they're asking her some questions. And so they say to her, what area do you think that foundations are missing? And I promise you, I didn't pay her to say this, but she said the cooperative sector. The foundations are really missing out on the cooperative sector. As the shared economy, shared ownership grows, I really feel like they should take a good look at that. And so as it relates to all of your organizations, and I know, Babby, obviously you're a little bit more versed in this than I am. What role do you all see the philanthropic community, be it state, community, foundations, some of these nationals, what role do you see them possibly playing, or what's the best role for them to play as it relates to the expansion of cooperative development and ownership? Anybody can take that.
I guess I'll take the first shot just because sorry, Lauren, you always have great words of wisdom. Just a quick word of interest is that we always make sure people know that your organizations need philanthropic capital, that investments are great, but you can't do the technical assistance that you're doing without philanthropic investments as well.
Thank you, Lauren.
Said it better than I could, Babby. There are some things that are not and should not be paid for by revenue generating activities, that we cannot have restorative practices or help build things up if we're just charging people who then cannot access them. So absolutely, there are some functions that should have philanthropic support. I love ecosystem building, technical assistance. We have got so many beautiful stories from Oscar about how deep and intensive and one-on-one real change with each individual business takes. That is not something that should just be turned into a YouTube video or some other kind of blanket strategy. It is intensive work and it requires philanthropic investment. I think the other piece that we always are building for the strategies that we put together is that we have blended capital stacks. So we have in the investment structure itself, we have philanthropic participants. Sometimes they're coming in just junior positions and being able to absorb some of the potential risk. I call it potential because it's not guaranteed risk, it's a perceived risk. But by taking on that position where you can absorb some more of that potential risk, then you can unlock larger pools of capital from institutional investors, including banks, including private wealth management clients, and be able to crowd in more resources so that we don't continue to have shared ownership be, as Babby said, the best kept secret. We don't want it to be a secret. We want it to become more commonplace. So I think that's one of the bigger strategies is for philanthropic communities. We as donor advised funds can participate, have foundations using PRI, MRI, all of the other letters you want to use. But also like seeding a loss reserve, taking a junior position, offsetting the additional support. Kristen had asked a really wonderful question in her framing for this session of how do we integrate technical assistance and financing. And we need to get away from a standard investment model that's looking at a 2 and 20 return. That means that you're trying to always look for efficiencies. And I'm not against efficiencies. I want them, but not if they come at the cost of that deep kind of partnership and work and value creation of working with the folks that you're investing in. And so if you are changing the economics of your fund structure, you have people who want to see how does my capital help to create more impact. That is a natural place for philanthropic investors to come in to say, you know what, let's do an 80% principal preservation and use this difference in what you would have been providing to a return-seeking investor and use that to invest deeper in working with each of the portfolio companies. So I'll leave my comments there, but I have many thoughts and I talk to philanthropy all the time about how they can consider these things.
Lauren, I can imagine that you have no shortage of comments on that subject.
Oh, so many opinions, but I'll keep it there.
About it. Yeah. Gopal, I took a lot of notes during your structured talk there, but you talked about the learning, the services, and I don't want to butcher my real bad notes here, but this was the three-pronged piece about the comments. Can you expound upon that just a little bit more?
Sure. I just want to really appreciate, Lauren, everything that you just laid out. If I could just add one sentence on that kind of relates to this also is there are very particular, well, there's a couple of things that have been on my mind a lot recently. First of all, the amount of capital spillage from the platform companies, like the Bezos Earth Fund, the Gates Fund, like the amount of philanthropic dollars that let's be just very honest, should have been taxed from the beginning and gone into public coffers. But Jeff Bezos is basically just vomiting volumes of dollars in philanthropy that I don't think we have shifted our orientation around how capital is moving through philanthropy sufficient to what is actually happening, right? Like Mackenzie Scott became the richest woman on the planet by getting a divorce. Like that's how much money they had, right? Like, so, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just like, we have to realize that like what we thought was a lot of money from philanthropy is that the game is totally shifted, and we need a coordinated strategy to go over large sums of philanthropic dollars, not simply for the philanthropic work, but to seed our funds so that we don't have as many external investors that we're beholden to. Like we don't need to always be thinking that the big pools of capital can only come from people who want a financial return. I don't think that's true anymore. And I think we need to have a coordinated strategy around that, quite honestly, for those others on that side of it. And so that relates to the seed commons in terms of these shared principles, shared learning, which is that we are 100% trying to build the capacity of each other. Like somebody comes up with a really great innovative way to look at business model canvassing for co-ops, and then everybody gets access to it. That we have regular, we're like I said, we're 30 loan funds currently. We're 150 loans out. We're 3,000 worker owners, over 3,000 worker owners through this process, inspired by Mondragon. I should have said that at the beginning. The financial model, the principle of debt subordination. So that's the shared learning piece. The shared services piece is all of the shared backend that we have. The loan management software, the coaching, the peer coaching, which is part of the shared learning and the shared services. And also, when we get philanthropic dollars in, we democratically redistribute them through a shared governance process amongst ourselves. So we put some into our shared services and infrastructure, and we actually give it out to each other. Right. And you will discover that when you focus on sharing and you focus on commoning, people are not self-interested. People are collectively interested. And so several times co-ops will say, oh, we don't need money this year. Let's put it into, members will say, we don't need resources this year. Well, let's put it into these other more emerging or, co-ops. So that's part of the shared services also. And then the last one is the shared capital. And this is about being able to aggregate so that we can get, so that we can be a $30 million fund and we can create a firewall between the investor and the particular projects. So it's not like I control the keys to the enclosure. Finance is now the keys to all enclosure. We used to talk about land as the mother of all enclosures. It's capital. It's the enclosure. It's finance as the enclosure of capital that is now the enabling enclosure of all other enclosures. And so if we can create commons of capital, that's how we create commons of housing, commons of work, all of the things that we know we need. And so one of the, by aggregating and going, where we can then go and get investment in that's at a larger scale, because we're a $30 million fund, as opposed to every single local fund trying to figure out how to meet its needs. So that's a really important part. Like scale is not just about getting bigger. And I think, John, you mentioned at the beginning, I'll shut up in a second. You mentioned at the beginning, like when you heard the word scale, you thought about like checking your weight. And to be honest, I think you're right. When we think about scale, we should not think scale means getting bigger. We should think about a scale, a balance, because something can be really, really, really big, like a balloon, and not tip the scales at all, but take up all the space.
Right.
And something can be really small and dense like a marble and just completely tip the scales, even though it doesn't take up a lot of space. And if you think of each of our loan funds as a marble building economic wealth in a community, a new center of gravity in a community, and then you put them all in a bag and you drop them on the scale, you have a lot of power. And that's what we're going for, aggregating to scale, building on the local knowledge, wisdom, and experience, but putting it all together in a way that can tell a bigger story, have a larger impact, and move larger amounts of capital.
And see, Gopal, I needed you years ago at that MIE conference. You could have put it all into a very easy to understand format for me there, trying to figure out what scale was. Thank you for that.
To be transparent, years ago, I was a preschool teacher. Like I have no background in finance. And you don't need one.
Me too. I mean, I wasn't a preschool teacher, but I have a degree in philosophy, which is probably why we're having fun here.
Well, I was a lobbyist, but don't tell anybody. Too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
anyway, it was all good
any
stuff.
of us can learn to do
all good
this.
stuff.
Any
it
of us
wasn't
can
bad
do
stuff. So
I want to hear from Oscar, but I want also just really briefly amplify something that Gopal was saying of what does scale mean, and the way that mission-driven finance grows is very similar in the approach of Seed Commons, not quite exactly the same, but we always said we don't want to run Fund 1, Fund 2, Fund 3, Fund 4, and just do bigger and bigger check sizes and bigger funds, but doing the same thing. We said, how can we leverage a shared infrastructure and back office to be able to have community-sized funds be viable? And so a lot of people scratch their heads. It's like, you're working with Project Equity and Oberon and on this clean water initiative and this other thing. So yeah, how can we find those similarities? How can we look creatively and then have this shared infrastructure that enables capital to flow differently?
Right.
That's what we think of as scale, not so that we make something a balloon, like Gopal said, but so that we can have these ways that community-sized impact is possible. Community-sized funds are possible.
Right. Thanks, Lauren. Thank you for posting that relevant article in the chat. So I'm gonna come to you in 1 second, Oscar, but I did have a question. I don't want the chat to go. Kevin asked, are there any examples of any of these financial entities working with unions, focusing on both maintaining membership through conversions and or new organizing, in parentheses, growth in membership in a given sector or geography? And I'll let anyone take that one.
Bueno, we have some
Go ahead,
examples
Oscar.
of this. Yeah. We work in this way, no? But not exactly with unions, maybe not promoted with unions, or unions are there, of course. And I think the unions in the States and the unions in Spain are maybe playing different role. But this question is the question of the conversion is very interesting for us, because usually are driven by problems of the company, no? And, due to the problems on the company, the workers take the control and take the converts in a cooperative on another way as more social, no? We finance a lot of process in that cases. I will say that the main thing here is to drive a very good business plan, a very realistic business plan, and also it's important the change of the management of the company. Who is in charge of the because usually the former managers go out, and the new managers they are going to play the new role, no? But usually the process are quite difficult, extremely difficult, because usually the process means reduce the capacity of the company. Sometimes it's not easy just to do that, but are quite success.
Good stuff. Thanks, Oscar. Did you go, Paul? Did you have something you wanted to add to the union piece there? I thought you were trying to unmute.
I accidentally clicked it, but I did want to invite Kristen, because I think Co-op Sydney is a good example, and I know Michael was lifted up in the chat also. And Seed Commons there are many union co-ops that have been supported in the Seed Commons as well through various local loan funds, and so that is there. I think at the heart of the question, however, was this like concerted, organized strategy, maybe going after a particular sector, and I think that's something that we can and should develop more deeply. And it's Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin. For some reason, I can't make my video work, which is odd. I hope it works.
Yeah,
by
it's
the
working.
end.
We can see you.
Oh, you guys
We can see you. Yeah, we can see you.
I can't see me, but well, hello. That's cool. Great. Kevin, what I was going to say, so Gopal and I are both on the Seed Commons Sustainability Committee. And so that's the group that makes the decisions around the loans. And we're all very labor friendly. I mean, any loan that comes to us has to go through, it has to meet all of our values and economic power, economic democracy. I mean, there are all kinds of good values, inclusivity, sustainability. I mean, all kinds of good stuff, but we're all very interested in that. And in terms of a concerted strategy, in terms of like an early warning network established through different unions, when I'm saying wear this time, I do wear a lot of hats. I would say Co-op Cincy and many others, One Worker, One Vote. are very interested in working more directly with unions in that way, and absolutely Seed Commons as a possibility. But there's other possibilities, because what Oscar was just saying, what he was just saying is as long as the fundamentals, as long as there's a viable, like it's truly a viable business that will support the workers going forward, that, it's not a bad deal. There really are ways to financing. It's really kind of exciting, I think, at this moment.
Awesome.
I'm just going to say very quickly that folks who don't know Kevin Christensen, he's amazing. I've learned so much about organizing and labor from Kevin over the years. So just super excited to see Kevin's name in the chat.
Somebody had said they thought that was a Michael Peck question, but that's a Kevin Christensen question. So that's good company there. But Babby, seriously, I want to ask you what brought the working group to? I mean, what was it about CDFIs that really brought you all to work with them as financial alternatives to banks? When all this stuff started.
That's easy. You all were the angels on the street. It didn't take long to discover that you all knew the community. Many of you worked in the communities and really were there to make a difference instead of creating a bureaucracy. And you all worked tirelessly to make sure that these entrepreneurs got as much support as you could possibly offer them. So that was an easy avenue.
Yeah, thanks for that, Babby. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I mean, I want to make sure I give everybody an opportunity here before we
I think one of the things, John, I want to highlight is
Please.
one of the things I love so much about what Seed Commons does and others is the sense of community. So that's why I'm part of Social Venture Circle, because we're a community of people who care and invest together. Seed Commons has their 30 different groups across the country, but they convene, they learn from each other. And I think that's the heart and soul, is we want to learn together and support each other. And to me, it's all about community at the end of the day.
That's why
I
we
love
all
that,
need
Babby.
chief community officers. That's why we all need chief community officers.
Exactly.
Go ahead,
But
Lauren.
also, if I may lean into, I don't always say this because I have to sit in so many different types of audiences, but if we are leaning into as well a little bit of an abolitionist mentality, then we should be building new structures of also how we're sharing knowledge and how we're sharing experience, not only how we're sharing ownership and capital. But that's why I loved hearing from Gopal of this shared learning, services, and capital, that we have to actually be able to share confidently. This is what worked well for us. Here's where we had some challenges. Why on earth, if we have any kind of love or appreciation for each other, would we say, go through the same headache that I went through in dealing with this? So I do think that these kinds of conversations that Co-op Cincy has so well curated and others is part of the work. It shouldn't be seen as extra to it.
Thanks, Lauren. So
I just want to give a quick shout out.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to give a quick shout out to Michael Peck, who is on our board, and for his tireless work in this space and for introducing me to this group. So thank you.
Yeah, well, look, a lot of what I know, it comes from him as well. So I'm used to getting those emails early in the morning because, he's an early riser. So here's another question. Matthew asks, I am curious if any lenders or philanthropic actors here are thinking about the way these individual marbles of new economy businesses, co-ops, et cetera, need certain shared infrastructure businesses, and how we can develop an appetite to form co-ops to serve other co-ops in spaces like credit card processing, web hosting, HVAC, construction, fiber, co-op, PEO for health plans, et cetera.
I'll just very quickly say that I think is something that has been developing more and more in the co-op movement. We recently, through the Seed Commons, have financed or supported a couple of cooperatives that are specifically about supporting back-end services like bookkeeping and those kinds of things. And I think we need more of that. But also figuring out, in the Bay Area here, we have network of Bay Area worker co-ops and No Boss, and we have other cooperation among cooperators that actually help support and build the businesses. So, for example, Design Action Collective is the graphic communications design firm for so much of the, not just the co-op movement, but also the social movements. So, looking for those opportunities and trying to assess where the gaps in our infrastructure are is really important. Brendan Martin from the Working World often makes this joke of like, everybody who loves beer wants to start a worker co-op brewery or pub or bar, but nobody wants to make pint glasses. But really, if we were serious, we'd be making pint glasses, because that's, that would be a way of having an impact. So I do think there's some really important back end stuff, especially around business side and payroll and things like that, where there's such a stranglehold by private entities.
I love it. And I know that many in the US look to Mondragon for what is this world that's possible if we have a bunch of cooperatively owned structures to provide these services. But exactly this point Gopal just made is there's so often a fixation on one shiny part of the ecosystem, but there are so many other elements that go into this all functioning together. And I think that we like to talk about, and we're fixated at Mission Driven Finance on how can we do the dreadfully unsexy stuff and help power these other things. Like, who else wants to work on capital calls and distributions? We do, but other funds don't need to build out that entire infrastructure. Anytime I get together with Joseph from Oberon, which has unfortunately only been one time in person thanks to this pandemic, he starts dreaming up all sorts of other businesses that should be part of a cooperative conglomerate and be able to serve the whole space. So let's make it happen.
I tell you, I've had a lot of panels. This might be my favorite one. It just, I mean, again, just such a plethora of experiences here on this a panel. We got 2 minutes left, so I don't know if anybody wanted to make a closing remark or anything. I would defer to Kristen. If not, I just, again, after the week I've had, I needed this panel today because, again, when I'm on things like this, it gives me hope, in regards to what we can all do collectively as opposed as individuals. So thank you all. Unless you have anything else to say, I'll turn it back over to Kristen.
Thank you so much. I'm curious if you can see me again, because I've got this really black box. Okay, interesting. Well, I just want to say a big thank you because I also have thoroughly enjoyed this panel. John, I think you did an awesome job facilitating, and there's been a lot of inspiration and beautiful pictures for me, actually metaphors for me to think about afterwards, which I'm really excited about. So I just wrote a little tiny thing in the chat. But I hope there are really interesting ways all of us can work together in the future, because one thing Lauren said was we really need creativity at this time, And I think creativity, John, you mentioned like it just becomes more powerful when we all get mixed up in different rooms together, and that can just sort of flow more easily. So I look forward to being in rooms with all of you and with all the other awesome people. There are awesome people that have been in this session. The challenge of virtual is you just don't get to see and hear and feel them in the same way. But I just want to appreciate everyone who's been here and let you know that the last thing of our day today is the concluding experience. There will be a 10 minutes of networking again. And then there will be a concluding experience. John's actually going to kick that off. We're going to honor Chuck Snyder, who just died so surprisingly, this absolute hero in the cooperative movement. And then we're going to have a pretty powerful speech by Melissa Scanlon to end us up on a fossil-free future full of cooperatives and inspiration. So I hope you can join us for that. But I do truly want to thank you all for being here today and sharing all your contributions. So big thanks. Have a great rest of your day.
Kristen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you
right.
all.
Thank you.
Happy weekend.
Yeah. Happy weekend.
Thanksgiving.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.